Lancaster Woodturners Weekly Coffee Hour number 212, right here on the boiling point. Let me see. I see 37 on screen. My name's John Kelsey. I'll be your moderator this morning. Hope you all have got a lot of things to show and talk about. I have a couple of announcements. August 6th is the next Lancaster Club meeting. Ziegler and I are going to do an experiment there. He's a relatively new turner, but he's taught himself how to make natural edge bowls. So he's going to turn one, and I'm going to question him. I'm going to interrupt him and ask him to explain what he's doing and poll the room to see, well, what good expert advice we can get. So it's going to be an interesting opportunity for people to put themselves out there and sort out a pretty good recent new turner. So
trying to inspire some of the newer turners in the club so they're not afraid to stand up and do something.
Exactly. Yeah, it'll be fun.
I'm looking forward to it.
August 10th, the following Saturday, is open shop. And in the middle there, August 8th, is the takedown of our Amtrak exhibition. The way we want to do that is we're going to get a team together, as we did to set up, to go, and we'll bring all of the packing materials that people delivered the work to us in the first place. Anybody who's in the area who can get there at 11:30 or between 11:30 and 12, please come and get your own work. That'll save us a whole lot of trouble. Then we'll pack up the work that's left in the risers and take it back to the club space and organize to get it back to the people who own it. But the simplest thing you can do is on August 8th, Thursday morning, at 11:30, after coffee hour, come on down to the Amtrak station and fetch your own work. That'll be easy for us and easy for you, and then it's on you if you drop it rather than on us. So it's been a great exhibition. It's been up for 3 months. We asked if we could extend. They said no. They have another artist who is eager to have the space. That's fine. I hope and expect we'll get another chance next year or the year after to do it again. We got a lot of inquiries as a result of the exhibition. Our website traffic went way up. And we have a number of new members who saw the work there and said, oh, I'd like to find out more about these people, and come along and join the club or are attending our events and considering joining the club. So that was what we wanted out of it. We also kind of hoped we would get asked to do another exhibition in some other space, maybe a library somewhere. That didn't happen, but that's partly, I think, because we didn't do anything to promote this thing. We just put it up there, and there it was. So no, not quite didn't do everything. I think Dave Bleil has placed an article in the journal. It didn't show up in this current journal, but I expect it'll be in the next one with a couple of pictures, so that's a good move. It was a good exhibition all around. It was really a good experience, and we learned how to do that too. We learned how to plan and organize an exhibition and make it inclusive for everyone who wanted to participate, and we did what we could to reduce chaos at setup by setting up at our own space in an evening where we had lots of time, taking pictures, using pictures to move around, and instead of moving precious work around, so we could organize it, and it went very, very smoothly as the whole exercise. It was a lot of background work, but it was worthwhile. So those are my events. Anybody else with any events or upcoming that you want to say? Nittany Valley, you got anything going on? Dave Bleil's waving his hand. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, the thing in the AAW will be in October, according to what they told me. And as far as the newspaper and WGL, they should have, next time we do anything like this, they need to be contacted before the event takes place so that they can have somebody there. And so we know that for next time. Thank you.
Yeah, part of that was we wanted to have a kind of a little opening exhibition party. Now, that didn't turn out to be in the interest of the train station. They didn't want us to do that. So we didn't actually have an event beyond putting the thing up. And frankly, I lost steam on organizing, so I didn't phone any TV stations or anything else. But the right thing would have been to ask somebody else to do that. So we'll take care of that next time. Anybody else? Any other announcements from any other local clubs? Randy, what's up with Susquehanna? You got an event coming up?
Yeah, our next meeting, which is in August, first Tuesday, or second Tuesday, we're going to have a hands-on event, and we will have lathes set up, and bring your tools, bring your face shield, and we're going to have wood and we'll have a good time.
Very cool. And what date is that?
That is the second Tuesday in August, and it will be starting at 6:30.
That's August 13th.
Yeah, I didn't look it up on my.
Yeah, August 13th. All right. Anybody else? Announcements?
Hey, John.
Yeah.
I got an idea. AAW's out investigating what we want them to do or be. One of the things I wonder, you did all this work on this collection of stuff for the train station. Is there any way they could, like, for a month or whatever, let us put a vlog of photos from that up on their site, and as a way of promoting a local organization, and maybe carry it on to others and say, hey, here's a way for us to learn about you guys.
I sent them pictures, a variety of pictures. They were most interested in seeing the pictures of it being set up by people. And they did want some of the pictures that showed a partial case with our name and logo on the one panel. So they have pictures for this thing that they're going to do in October.
They also do a little newsletter bulletin that goes out to clubs. That would be the place to put it. Just somebody has to take the initiative and go and get in touch with them and give them the stuff, because they're always crying for material. I forget what it's called, but it's a little online newsletter that comes out every couple of weeks, maybe every month. So the opportunity is there. Just we didn't work it as hard as we could have this time out. Okay, I'm going to move along, I think. Got some hands up, so I'm going to call on them. I'm going to start with Ziegler. What would you like to show us, John?
Well, I was going through a bunch of wood that was behind my shop. Some of it had been anchor sealed, but I didn't do anything with it. So I had made a little weed pot for Patty, just for fun, to practice a little bit. So I found this chunk of walnut out there and turned this on center. So then I was watching Mike Peace, and he was doing his off-center stuff. So I thought I'd get another piece of wood, and it's not very attractive, but it is off-center. It's the first thing I really done off-center. It's kind of large for off-center. Certainly not beautiful, just practice. So then I got a really big piece of wood, and this was just painful. I don't know why I did it, but I brought it in, and Patty looked at it, and she said, well, it's masculine. So I made this candle holder. So that was just brutal.
Do you think that's going to stay together? Do you think that's going to, or is that got the pith in it there?
Yeah,
you think
it does. It does.
And it hasn't developed a radial crack yet?
There's a little bit of a crack that just goes from here to here.
Huh.
But other than that, and frankly, if it cracks, I'm not worried about it. I was just trying to turn something that was kind of large and off center.
Well, that's
so then I had a piece. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just going to say that's a good effort then. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I have some friends coming tomorrow. I wanted to make something for, her name's Debbie. She retired. And I had a piece of tamarind that I got a while ago from Groff and Groff. I do not like the proportions. It's a weed. It's really a twig pot. It's not hollow. I just drilled it. So the proportions are pretty poor. But I will say I do like, and the top looks like it should unscrew. It looks like a shaker bottle or something stupid like that. But I do like the way the spalting and what have you kind of flowed down from the top. It was just way too elongated. So then I made a smaller one out of the rest of the piece, and the proportions are not great, but
better.
At least they're better than that one.
It does look like you want to open it, so you could make that so you could open it.
Yeah, I could. And I have other pieces, not tamarind, but the top, it should have had a better curve in it here. This feels a little too clunky to me for the proportions. I wanted it to be a little bit more fine. But anyhow, so that's what I was messing around with, just turning some spindle stuff, because I hadn't turned anything lately.
Well, let me ask you about proportions. Bring that back up, the two, if you would, the two similar ones. Are you consciously like measuring from the bead up and the bead down and having a ratio between? I mean, the little one looks like it's 1 to 2, so you could divide that into thirds. Is that what you're doing, or do you just not do that?
This one I drew. I think I even used SketchUp for it. Or maybe I just sketched it. But I did measure this, and I turned almost to it, except for this part up here. That should have been a better cove. This one, I had an idea, but I didn't really measure anything. So,
but this one,
the time I got
the first one, the little one, the smaller one, it looks to me.
This was the second one I turned.
The second one, the smaller one. It looks to me like from the bead up to the top is exactly twice as high as the bottom part. In other words, that's a proportion of 2 and 1. Is that right? Are you do you do that consciously, or do you just eyeball it until it looks right, or do you actually measure and calculate that?
I guess it was both. I mean, I did do it about 2 to 1, but it also kind of looked right, except that I still feel the top is a little top heavy and the proportions are maybe, I don't know. There's still something not quite right about it. It's better than this one, but it's still not quite right.
So I don't hate the first one, to tell you the truth.
Really?
And I do like the curve on the top. It would have been nicer perhaps if the bottom piece had a curve like your other piece does rather than a straight side. But otherwise, things can be longer. It's not, everything has to be golden ratios. I don't think it's whack. Yeah.
No,
Turn them upside down, John. Turn them upside down. No, right upside down.
Oh, you sound like my architecture teacher who said, look at your building look at the plan in section.
Yep.
My sister's an artist, and she says that if you want to do something, put a reverse image on it and look at it that way.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Just said your eye will tell you what you like and what you don't like.
No, you're right. I mean, the taller one does have a curve here. It's not all that distinguishable, but it's not flat. It does curve, but it just, if it was going to be a curved urn kind of a shape, it just needed to be more accentuated. It just feels like it's neither here nor there.
I kind of like the taller one as well. What I don't like about it is the add-on base.
Yeah, I was going to paint the base black to make it to distinguish it from the body of the work, and maybe just look like a base that wasn't part of it.
Maybe take it off.
Or I could take it off. But they're coming tomorrow, so I think I'm going to give it to her like it is.
All right.
Her husband was the one that when I gave him his retirement bowl a year or so ago, he looked at it, pulled it out of the bag, looked at it, put it on the counter. We were at a tavern in Princeton, and he says, "Is there anything else in the bag?" I said, "No." So he put his arm around this guy sitting next to him. He goes, "Take my picture." So I said to Patty, "Well, I guess I won't be turning anything else for Ed again." So Debbie kind of liked it. So I felt like maybe I should make something for her, but I don't know that she's I don't know what the word is, aesthetically oriented, but I don't want to take the time today, I don't think, to turn the bottom off. I could.
So
anyway,
when you give a piece to somebody like that as a gift, and then you visit them at their house, do you look for it?
I haven't given enough pieces to people, or the pieces that I have given to people live in New Jersey, and I've not been to their homes after I gave it to them. Now, I will say I've given several pieces to my mother-in-law, who lives in North Carolina. And when I go down there, she has them tucked around the corner on a hutch in her dining room that she never uses. And you can't even see them. They're just like, in fact, I made 3 little weed pots, all different sizes and proportions, a year or so ago. And there's this lady that helps her with stuff around the house, occasionally a neighbor. She gave one of them to her because she wanted to thank her for her help. I thought, well, I would have just made one for Susan if you told me, but she just gave one away. So I guess it's all good, but Patty goes, don't make anything else for her. She's just going to stick it in the dining room and never look at it.
Well, I know I terrify a lot of relatives by saying I'm going to come and visit, and they say, where the hell did we put that piece that he turned?
Yeah.
I went to visit someone who I'd given a piece to about 10 years ago, and I remember thinking at the time, that's a really nice piece. I'm glad she has that. And it was in her living room when I visited, and I didn't like it at all. It was terrible. So,
Oh, really?
I felt good that I brought her something more recent.
Well, if I have time, I don't even think I'm going to give this to her today. I got a piece of Coca-Cola or Bacot or something like that. I might try it again today.
Hey, Sean.
Doctor it up by make some wooden flowers. If you just spend 15, 20 minutes and make some of those wooden flowers and stick in it, it's amazing what that will do for the whole aesthetics of it. Just
Well, that sounds good, Bert, except 15 to 20 minutes for you, maybe. Probably the rest of the afternoon for me.
John,
the simple ones, the ones you do with the skew, where you just take a branch and just curl the stuff back. It only takes like minutes to make the flower, and then put it on a stick.
Well,
and the size of the branch dictates the size of the flower, and they look amazing when you put it in a vase. In a weed pot, they're perfect.
That's after you've made a few. The first one take a little longer, I think.
Hey, John.
You must use wet wood, though. You must use freshly cut wood to do that.
Actually, I don't. I used maple. I've used kiln-dried maple. I've tried it. The real green wood, they curl up really nice. But if you use a dry wood, the flower is so much more robust. They don't break off. They're you just got to play with it. You're right. Yeah, it doesn't take long, but play with it. Green wood is easy. Harder wood's a little tougher to make them, but they last a lot longer.
Hey, Zig.
Yeah.
Hold that tall one up again. I have a comment about dimensions. When you have a tall vessel, I think it's easier to make a concave rather than a convex shape. The convex shape is a very delicate shape. You got to make it pronounced enough to make it you can get away with a little more concave that's gentle. This just happens to be a 4-inch one I was fooling around with in the shop. I'm not saying it's necessarily marvelous, but I just find when I'm turning, if I don't get the convex quite right, then I have to, now this one, then it works better that way. But boy, do you get it tall, then
Why don't you hold the two of those side by side?
Hang on. I should have taken
Fit the curve of one into the other. And then you hold them so that the bases are I'm thinking you're making the same curve in reverse, but you're not. No, the other way. Side by side. Yeah, okay, that was interesting. That's interesting, too. I was imagining, okay. It isn't the way I thought it was. That's good.
Yeah, it's ironic. I didn't measure. I just had these 3 chunks of wood that came out of the same chunk. And I just threw them on the lathe and worked on them. So,
well, that's.
But I don't know what I spent a lot of time on these, trying to figure, even though they were little, trying to figure out the curves right. The bigger curves are easier for me to make than the smaller ones, I think. But just my comment. What happened to Zig? Did he leave?
No.
No, he's here.
What I was going to say is clearly totally a different shape. But my grandfather turned this about 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's clearly much more robust and more of like a traditional urn shape. This was, like I said, it's okay, but neither here nor there, really. In his case, the base is clearly part of the urn. Well, this looks like it's something sitting on a base.
That's the thing I've found in my own stuff. Whatever curve I'm trying to make, it'll come out better if I push it further than I thought I was going to. If I have enough wood to make the curve more of a curve, a bigger sweep, I like the piece better in the end than if it's a gentle, subtle curve. But that might be just my own, personality.
No, I think I agree with you, John. I just tried. It should have been a shorter piece or a bigger piece of wood to have a curve like I was trying.
Well, do you have any wall thickness left? I'd be tempted to put it back on the lathe and try to make a concave and see if that helps the overall look of it.
This is not hollowed out, Jim. This is just drilled. This is just a bud vase, and I got a little test tube to go down there so she can put some water in it.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, I think it's.
Well, I wondered if I can't guarantee it, but I was just wondering if you played with it that way.
No, the way to
or
do it is
just simply made it shorter.
Make another. Always.
Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it as it is if I give it to her or not. And and if I don't have time to turn it before she leaves, clearly I have other blanks in the shop, and I'll just turn another with better proportions.
John, I brought you some flowers.
Oh, look at that. Those are beautiful. Oh my gosh. How do you turn that on a lathe without losing those so-called petals?
Well, that's with the skew. That is the wetwood I mentioned when Bert mentioned it. They're literally just done with a skew, and then just a toothpick put in the bottom.
Well, clearly I'm going to have to go online and watch the YouTubes about turning flowers.
Yeah, there's a lot of it out there. They almost look like actual flowers. They're good.
Yeah, they are. They're beautiful.
Very, very sweet.
Just
John, can I show one quick picture?
Sure, and I'm going to move it along from this. So go ahead, bring it up. What do you got? Yeah, exactly, Mike. I love that.
I think for a lot of shapes, sometimes you can turn very small samples out of a branch. These are box forms or could be finials on the end of a curtain rod or something. But I think little ones that you can just play with the shapes and start thinking about how the pieces. But John, I think the key thing that you're on to is self-critique and looking at the work and evaluating it and say, what should I try different next time, I think is the key.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I agree with you, Mike.
You can always make another.
Yep. And I'm ready.
Okay. Great discussion. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to move along to Ray Simmons now. Ray, what do you want to show us today? I think you're muted, buddy. We see your Zoom screen. We don't see any pictures.
Did me in again. Let me stop and do it again.
Yeah. We're still just.
It's kicking out.
You got to get.
Out.
Yeah, you're choosing the wrong. When you go to the share, you got to choose the one where your pictures are rather than the Zoom screen. There you go, Richlite.
Okay, this is just a picture. I've been turning those little dishes in that Richlite, and I just wanted, it was hard to explain what this is. This is a piece they sent me, a trim piece. This is actually a 1/2 inch in thickness, but this is what it looks like when they make this. This is all paper, and that's what it looks like.
So this is like paper stacked up with a resin to make it into a solid?
Yep, they make it just like you do plywood, but it's paper and resin rather than wood. And because paper has a grain, they alternate the directions. And these I measured about 4/1000th of an inch. So this is down, thickness of a piece of paper, and then they stack it. But when you get it, you don't see any of this. They trim it all off. But they had sent me a piece just to show, because people are interested on how it's done. So
paper does have a grain. So you mean they alternate the sheets one way and the other way?
Yes.
That's interesting. So that means if you glue a book together, you don't get the same result.
Correct. And you can see this is a 1/2 inch here. So
that's a lot.
How thin this is. So when they trim this off, you don't get any of these lines or anything like that.
So that stuff polishes up to a high shine, doesn't it?
Yes. You're working with resin. Even when you cut it, you don't see anything that looks like this when you cut it. You might pick up a little bit of this, they've cut this and you get these little pieces here, but that all cleans up. And
If you look at it close, do you see like horizontal lines across it, like each sheet of paper showing as a line?
no, you don't see, once they do the process and trim it, it's all got, this is all gone.
And where do you get this stuff?
From the company Richlite.
Okay, so you look up Richlite online and find them.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that it?
Ray, have you turned this Richlite product on a regular lathe or only on your engine?
Yeah, I've done it on the regular lathe. I mean, actually turns better than just resin. I mean, it's firm. The stuff is firm, but it's hard. It's not a soft material.
Does it come off in long strings?
No, not really. It's hard to describe because it's like turning plastic plywood. So, but you can do it. The thing about it is you're not getting this. When you get this in the real thick stuff, this is very, very, very pricey. So, like for a countertop, you put a countertop in, it's a one and done thing. So, but for what I've been doing, you saw the size of this stuff I'm doing is 4, 5, 6 inches in diameter or square. It's not so bad, but it's about $70, probably $70 a square foot.
Huh.
Hey, I'm glad you brought that up because I hear of this more and more in the ornamental turning community as an alternative to blackwood.
Yes.
And what I keep hearing, and I think you're saying, is it costs about the same as blackwood, but we don't have to worry with destroying the environment to get it.
Correct. Now, the thing about it is, one thing about it is a difference I found. I dropped a piece, and when it hits the floor, it dings just like resin. So it's not wood, it's not resin, it's the combination. So I mean, it's not like you drop it and it bounced, but you can tell, you can tell where it hit the floor. But it saves blackwood, and it comes in all different kinds of colors. And I think some people, there's a little bit of interest in it, but what you don't have is you don't have the grain. You don't have the grain, and you don't have, what you do with it has to be pretty focused. Like, I do those little dishes, and what brings it out is the pattern and the design. But I'm not using blackwood. The other thing about it is it's uniform. So if you want a piece where the design is key, like if I do something and I put a pattern in there, and I really want the light to show that pattern, I don't use a piece of blackwood that's got any grain or anything, and it takes away from it. And it's getting harder and harder to get the quality. You have to get instrument grade blackwood, and it gets more and more and more expensive. It's harder and harder to find. For something that goes up on a stand or something like that, this works extremely well.
All right.
What thickness is it available in, Ray?
Well, the piece I showed in that picture was 1/2 inch, and it varies on availability. But I got 3/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 1/4 inch stuff, and then they have the countertop thicknesses, which really for me, it doesn't make sense to buy a blank that's 1.5, 2 inches thick, and then turn it all away, because that becomes very, very expensive to throw away. It's because I can work. I have a piece I'm working on that's starting out. It's only 1/4 inch thick, but you can get countertop pieces that are countertop thickness. But you're getting up to dollars per square inch.
Rich, your comment about the environment, I'm not so sure that it is any better than us using blackwood, because you're using chemicals like resin to make it. And I'm never quite sure. I use resin, but I'm never quite sure what the environmental impact is of that chemistry. I'm not enough of a chemist to know what's in it. So.
Well,
No, Jim, I think you're right. The real point I was making is the blackwood tree is becoming very much decimated, especially with a lot of people harvesting it that are doing it illegally, since it's so valuable. And it's an attempt to save the blackwood tree.
No, I'm with you there. I'm just saying it's always a complicated matter. That's a little different issue when you're trying to save a species, but the replacement is also sucking out of our environment. So,
Well, you make a good point, but anytime you walk into the store and there sits some species for sale, we're not asking that question. Maybe we ought to. But all this stuff, it's coming out of Africa and these other places. I mean, they're wiping it out for $1. So the rainforests are dying for some of this stuff. So, it's kind of where your conscience goes, I guess.
It's hard to make an impact as an individual. Your contribution is a drop in the ocean. So the move is to get a lot of people to make a drop in the ocean, and that's very, very difficult.
Well, there's an organization that, and I forget the name, but there's people out there that are working to save the blackwood. The problem is, and you get into the politics of it. And the problem is people do this. They get on a thing. We're guilty of that. Oh, look what we're doing, and then what happens is we have gone to a country, gave them a market for something that ends up turning into where they're destroying the market, and we walk away. So we've created an economy, a false economy, that now dies, and so it's a big thing. I mean, it's just more than saying, well, let's just get together. I think there's a couple of different ways to look at it. One way I agree, we probably shouldn't be using the blackwood like that. And my using this really didn't affect the blackwood market at all.
You didn't affect the petroleum product market either. I mean, it's a drop in the ocean again.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if I buy 20 square feet of this, the only thing I could say, you want to make a point of it is, I supported an American company, but that's like supporting the petroleum industry. So yeah, I bought American gas. Well, good for me, I guess.
Going to move it along. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Jeff Hankinson.
Morning.
Morning.
I had to make a couple of gifts, so I thought I'd show you what those things look like. The first one is a little box of birch with a little bit of ornamental turning detail on the top there. So I'm trying to do some rose engine work on local woods, rather than using. I could get the really good stuff. I've got a chunk of ebony sitting out in the shop that I've never used. Well, a whole branch actually, but it's nice to do local woods and see what I can get away with. So that's one. And the other one, I thought,
wait a minute. Go back and show us how that lid fits, please.
Oh, that's just a simple.
Okay.
Oops. That's just a simple.
Okay, just a plug in a hole.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't want it because the box is so thin. I didn't want to try to do weird stuff like threading it. And then just as a comment on nature, you just gotta love feather. So this is a little coin dish, and I found a nice piece of birch out there, split appropriately, and got the feather out of it. And as usual, the bottom side is always better than the top, but oh well.
What's the finish on that?
This is wipe on poly, and then I buff it with Mr. Bleil's system, and I get a very durable finish that's water resistant and easy to apply, really. And then with the wax, it lasts for a long time, and as everybody knows, shiny sells.
Indeed. Is that it from you today?
That's it.
Any questions for Jeff? All right, looks like you knocked him dead with that beautiful work. I'm going to go to Ron Sheehan because we haven't heard from you in a while, Ron. I got Barry, Bowman, and Wilson up next as well. Ron?
Yeah, I've been just been down the shop doing little odds and ends, what have you. So I haven't been signing on. Just wanted to remind everybody, symposium's coming up, September 20th. We're going to be starting to set up. The 21, 22 is the date of the symposium in Lancaster. We have a pretty good registration started coming in, but still look for some more people. And I've got most of my volunteers lined up, but I still could use a couple of videographers. If anybody's signing up and interested in doing video work, appreciate that.
Are you going to show us any of the things you've been turning?
No, I don't have anything here to show.
I don't have any turning there to show. Okay. So you just want to plug the symposium, and I agree. The regional symposiums are great, and the Lancaster Mid-Atlantic Symposium in September is a terrific one. And there's a real roster of experts coming to turn, including Alan Lacer. You ever don't get
Yeah, we got Alan Lacer, Nick Cook, Stuart Batty. In my opinion, one of the best turners to be able to explain to you how a tool interacts with the wood grain.
Yeah,
which way the grain grows and whatever, and he'll explain that in great detail. It always amazes me watching him.
And also, Alan Lacer's a world-class skew mechanic. So if you want to learn skew, get in his workshop.
Yeah, he does. I saw him use I don't know what it was, 3.5 inch and a half wide skew to turn a spin top that was about a quarter of an inch in diameter.
Yeah, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else we got? Keith Gottschall is coming in. Mark Hancock. Yeah, Nick Cook.
It's a hell of a roster.
Carol Hall is going to be doing some demonstrating. She does a lot of embellishing, coloring, and so forth. She's pretty good at demonstrating a lot of that.
It's going to be a very good symposium for anybody who can get to Lancaster in September.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ron. Barry. Barry Price. Yeah.
First of all, back to weed pots. This one here, it's done with a modified version of a duck chuck, and I'm sorry, Jim Duckberry is here online. This was turning with basically every 90 degrees if I used his chuck. The derivative I made, and this borehole goes down about 4 inches, I believe.
That's really nice, Barry.
I'm sorry?
I thought that's really nice.
Yeah, I'm real happy with it. It's the result mostly of sandpaper. I mean, when you turn with the interrupted cut of multi-axis, I don't know I can't think of a tool that you could take across it unless you were very gutsy with the skew and did the cuts. But I want to also show the modified jig. It looks at first glance just like one of Duckberry's. Got a couple modifications. One, the pin here is to create absolute alignment, repeatable alignments, and resist, if you're turning something like that weed vase or something larger, the impact of the tool, I couldn't clamp it down tight enough to not wind up with it being off by 5 or 7 degrees or something, and so not the correct 4-sided or 3-sided or whatever you were trying to make.
How does the pin help you? What's it doing for you?
Well, the pin, this piece here is what I made to engage. This is the 2-inch diameter that goes into the receptacle, or whatever, the bore. And the holes are pre-drilled. I'll show you the like a carousel face here. The ones that are green, this is the start hole up here, no matter how many facets you're doing. The greens are for like what I do with this vase, every 90 degrees. The blues are for a 5-sided object. And this is only for spindle work, by the way. You do have to have a tailstock in place. And then the reds are for 3-sided.
So when do you glue the workpiece to that thing?
No, it's been drilled and countersunk with 3 holes that will accept number 10 screws. Put in 2.5-inch long screws, and they emerge on the work side by about 1/2 inch. And when I turn a round blank, you could do it with this, but I do it with regular, conventionally with spur center. And I leave a little like 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch, whatever is convenient in the turning. When I clean off the ends, I leave a 1/2 inch spud. And it goes into that hole right there, only for alignment. It can be loose, it can be tight. It's just to give a general alignment so that your piece is pretty much on center. It doesn't have to be exactly on center because you're going to be taking almost all the surface away. But anyhow, that would go.
So that goes to the chuck, and the bored hole is firmly on the pin, so that forces alignment. I see what you're doing.
Right. It keeps it from moving rotating out of position.
Yeah.
And then you don't do any marking on the tailstock end of the piece other than putting some circles on there that are like if you're doing a 3-sided object, the 3 lobes have a low point on each one, and you have to mark the end, so when you're turning, you don't turn way down through on one of the sides you're turning. You want to turn all 3 just down to a specific diameter or false diameter.
What size chuck do you put that in? What's your chuck? What's your chuck that you use to put it in?
It's a Vic 120. Which has dovetail, or at least I use it with dovetail jaws. And so the cross section of this piece, the Duxbury normal one, this face would ride on, the recessed faces of the 2 remaining. You take 2 of the jaws out, and the remaining 2 jaws, the block would be sitting at the bases, not like you normally want to do on the top of the chuck jaw. And so I ran these 10-degree cuts in here so that it exactly conforms to the edge of the chuck jaw. And then when you compress, you compress very tight.
You get a good bite there.
Deliberately make compressions to 0 point and then every 1/4 inch up to 1 inch. I made one that had like 1.5 inches, but it's just too wild on doing usable spindle work. And the business side, of course,
I can see that. Yeah, no, you've marked the dimensions there. Yeah.
It advances from the 0. I think these are coming up to the mirror image, but it's 1/4, 1/2, 3/4.
We see
3/4 is 1.
Yeah, it's not reversed to us. So.
And so it absolutely repositions. But after you're all done, you have to do some final turning on the mouth of the piece.
Yeah, where you want it round, you're going to have to do that too. Yeah.
And as long as you don't unmount the screws and remount it, it does a good job of staying right where it started out.
Questions for Barry? Every time I see you guys with these ducks chuck things, it makes me want to go and do it, and then I go down to the shop and I get distracted. And you know, someday soon. Very, very interesting work, and much simpler than what we used to do. Somebody was buttoned in. Come on.
Yeah, Barry, are you going to sell those?
No.
Because I'd be interested if you were.
No, I'm not going to. I take too long to make anything I make to not embarrass myself by asking for how much money I would like to recoup for my time investment. So I just either give them away, or in particular, if somebody gives me wood, I'll give them back. It's a no gain thing. I give them back a bowl I made from it or whatever. And if they give me a crappy piece of wood, I give them a different piece of wood back made into something.
I like the color code. I like the color coding for the pins. That's a nice idea. Especially the beginning one had all the colors.
And that white, by the way, is the countertop corian from the cabinet shop where our club meets. At one point I had like 8 cutout sinks, 12, 14-inch squares of corian, all pure white. And it's a little tougher than acrylic to mill, but it does mills nicely.
Out of the dumpster. Other questions for Barry? Anybody? I'm going to just have a quickie to a gallery view and have a look at who we got on here. We got 45 on here today, filling up my screen very nicely. I like that. Any other comments for Barry? I'm going to go to Jonathan Wilson next. Okay, Jonathan, haven't heard from you in a while. What are you going to show us?
I have a follow-up for you on the finish. You had asked about, where I had demoed a component with some finish comparing the two. And then I had a cherry burl that was run and turned into a couple bowls comparing Osmo Top Oil to Waterlock's original. I'm a fan of both. Osmo has taken over as my new favorite, but I have a very difficult time, as I mentioned prior, comparing the two. Oh, one looks great, one doesn't look great, whatever the case may be. So my best source of info is to run around and cut them in half, make a bowl, and compare the two with 2 different finishes. It may take more time, but it allows me to see what I'm working with. They're very, very similar. And I think the other one I did was actually with, what did I do the other one with? Birch? I think I did the other one with the birch. And that was a similar comparison. And in birch, in that scenario, I prefer the top oil. In cherry, I can go both ways. I literally can go both ways. And depending on how the surface is, whether there's surface checks or cracks or whatever the case may be, or features that are in you're just not going to cut away. I'm still leaning towards the Osmo. There's nothing wrong with the Waterlocks, but I'm still leaning towards the Osmo.
Now, do you buff these after how many coats you putting on? What's your finishing routine? Do you buff them? Give us the whole scoop.
So the Waterlocks, as a general rule, is 3 coats, then it's buffed with the Bleil system, and then final with a Canuba. Right, the final wax is a Canuba wax. That takes time, and then the Osmo is 3 coats of Osmo, and then a final buff by hand with the towel, and that's good to go out the door. I'm good.
You don't use the BL
system? Both of these rounds were taken from the same tree, same half ring, whatever you want to call it. So
you don't use the BL system on the Osmo?
I don't. I haven't tried it on the Osmo because of the wax component in there, and the hand buffing and just rubbing with the microfiber towel seems to put on a shine that's maybe not as honey or shiny, but you're comparing one Waterlock's varnish gloss versus Well, is that right? No, it's a polygloss versus a varnish, a wax varnish.
Well,
matte, I would call the Osmo a matte. So it's supposed to be different visuals, but comparing it in the same wood is the way that I need to see both in the same wood.
So when you say you put on 3 coats of Osmo, are those wiped on off the lathe, or are they buffed on the lathe, burnished on, or exactly how are you doing it?
Right, so it's off the lathe. All of the coats are off the lathe. I want access to the lathe. The lathe needs to keep spinning. And there's literally a station set up, a finishing station. You'll see here in a minute, I have another video for you.
So you wipe the finish on and then wipe it dry, right? So there's no
Correct.
puddles or anything. You do the same with the water locks?
I do the same with the water locks. So wipe on, the instructions talk about 20 minutes to 30 minutes. Wipe on what you're finishing and then immediately transition into wipe off. Because the longer you wait, the harder you're rubbing and following up with that. And it's not that I'm not strong and that I can't do it, or anyone can't do it, but just get right to it, cut to the chase.
That's what I do too. I wipe it on and I wipe it right off, and so it's got a uniform coat in the wood somewhere, but there's no puddle on the surface, and I'm not rubbing hard on sticky, partly settled stuff. I'm just wipe on, wipe off.
Right, and the other one-liner, and it happens more with the water locks. By the time I'm done finishing what I need to finish, the wood is absorbed when what it needs to absorb. Wipe off the residual, move on.
Yeah.
And wait another 10 minutes, you'll gain more. No, you're not going to gain that much more, and it's going to be hard work. Just wipe it off. You'll be fine.
Why 3 coats versus 4 coats? Have you fooled around with that?
I have. The 4 coats just seems to be dulling the edge with the Osmo. 3 coats gives me the matte surface that is blemish-free. The feel is right. The challenge with the water locks, I find 4 coats with the water locks gets it to the level where it's consistent. It's not that 1 or 2 doesn't work, but depending on the surface conditions of the wood, whatever the species is, 3 to 4 coats with the water lock seems to equalize everything, and it flattens everything. That gets me to an equal medium where it's all good. It's all absorbed in.
That's a terrific experiment in comparison to run. I've been wanting to do that myself. Now I don't have to, because you're using the same finishes I've been working with for years, and I like them both for different. And I'm liking Osmo better these days because it's easier on my hands. You know, it's just I don't know. It just feels good.
And I want to be clear. I'm not being negative against water locks. I still use water locks, and I don't want to create the impression that I'm trying to sell you folks on Osmo. There's a comparison for me to view where things are at. That's literally it. Apologize for the yellow bloody pictures, but it is what it is. It's what I had pictures of, and here we are. So
you got a video?
I have a brief video. I have, or had. I had a very, can you folks see that? Is that spinning?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
It's not long. It's literally 30, 40 seconds. I had a large piece of maple that was put in the shed, I don't know how many years ago. I finally got it to turn. Outboard turning, spalted maple, came out great. My reason for putting this up is a question for maybe Toby or somebody that works with the dyes and the colorations. This was a great opportunity to work with something other than Osmo. This was finished in an Osmo. It came out great. I'm not in love with the form, but what would have taken it over the edge, or what you'll see glowing here, are the chatoyance is coming out. You're seeing some rippling underneath. But I think that this would have gone great if I had used some color or worked with the color. And the grain you see, some people say, well, you shouldn't have the gray. That wood's not right, Wilson. You should have used something else. I think it works for this piece. So that's just my opinion. But I wanted to share it with you folks. That's it.
The thing that I would do
Is there a particular applicator that you're using, Jonathan?
So the consistent applicator is a really highly technical blue shop towel. So blue shop towel.
Paper or cloth?
It's a paper. The buffing takes over with the leftover dyed out, what is it, microfiber cloths. The buffing takes place with that.
I always put the first coat of Osmo on the lathe. I don't do that with water locks, but with Osmo, While I have the piece, before I take the piece off the lathe, I'll buff on that first coat and then wipe on the second and third.
Yeah, my process is once it's off the lathe, there's nothing more to be done on the lathe. Move right to finish. It goes to the finish station. There's the process. That's just the way that I've associated it with. The other challenge was applying wet finish way back when, and it wasn't, I say way back when, utilizing the Watco Watco, what is it?
Antique oil.
Antique oil, or the version therein. I used to apply
oil,
that wet, and okay, you'd get the slurry, and that would buff and oil in, right? Not only would it make an unholy mess, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, but you needed to clean up after it. It just was easier. Get off the lathe, get rid of the dust, get out of that environment, push it over to the cellar, and you're seeing the cellar here.
Yeah.
And just, that's the process. So.
Well, the other thing, if you were putting it on in the lathe, you have to develop the reflex of not standing where it's going to spray on you when you turn the lathe on, because it's going to cover your glasses with whatever that finish is.
Right, and I think we all have the wet turning lines on the floor, or the the kiln, or the refrigerator, or whatever is standing around, right, the lathe. There's, what's that line from? Never mind, move along. So you try not to explain that to people.
Very good stuff. Any more questions for Jonathan or comments on these finishes? I'm delighted.
Yeah, I have a comment. This is Ron Sheehan. I guess I've been turning for 20-some years, and probably 2 or 3 years into it, when I started, I got on the water locks. I've been using water locks ever since on everything. You didn't say anything about a sealer. What I do is I take that Zinsser's seal coat shellac, and I thin that a little bit with alcohol, and I'll put a coat of that on first. Then light sanding, it'll raise the grain a little bit, and light sanding on that. And I find if I don't seal it, I'm gonna need 3 or maybe 4 coats of water locks. If I seal it, I can probably get away with 2 coats of water locks, but I nearly always do 3 coats. I've used water locks on furniture, tables and such as that. I'll put 5 coats on the top of the table, 3 coats on everything else. But I just wipe the water locks on with a small piece of cloth, or even use paper towel on occasion. But usually I'll use a cloth. I'll wipe it on and leave it overnight, and put a second coat on, and a third coat another day.
That's a good routine.
And then I'll buff it out with the Bleil system, carnauba wax on top.
I've tried using that sealer stuff as a first coat, and I don't like it. It doesn't work for me.
You raise a great point, and when using the Bleil system, what I've come to learn, or maybe it's not that I've learned, maybe it's a cheat or a hack, but you get a raised surface near, you're seeing an example of it here, cracking and splitting, checking, whatever the correct terminology is in this cherry burl. You'll gain a raised point where, and this is probably the wrong one to do it with, but you'll gain a raised surface where you're gaining excess on a crack or an issue. And with the Bleil system, the Tripoli is absolutely paramount to get that off, or to get that raised residual water locks off of that section. If you're not doing that, then what it transitions into is, or what I have done as a solution, between coats, you're steel wooling with the 4/0 steel wool to get rid of the raised bits, wherever the case may be. And the goal was, it's not that I'm against that, but let's minimize the work and try and streamline it as much as possible. So the Osmo, it's not an issue. And I don't want to be negative against water locks, but what you've provided is another solution, a great solution. So.
Well, I don't know anything about the Osmo. I've never used it, but I can tell you, water locks is repairable. I had a piece of furniture that I delivered up to Connecticut to my daughter, and it got a mark rubbed into it from riding in a car, and a blanket came off of it. And it was on a sideboard that I had made. put that in the dining room, and there's this rub mark. And I anticipated that, so I took all my finishing, sanding, everything along with me. And I rubbed that out a little bit with fine sandpaper, put a couple coats of waterlocks on it, and the next day, looking at that finish, I could not find that mark.
Yeah.
It completely covered, it got refinished just like the original finish.
I've had the same experience with Osmo, Ron. It's also extremely repairable. That I like both finishes. Personally, I like the feel under the hand of the Osmo. It just feels nice on the finished piece. But that's not to take anything away from waterlocks, which is, as everybody knows, a great finish.
Yeah. Now, I don't know much about it. Bob Gockenauer is using a finish that he's buying, and I don't know what it's very similar to a waterlocks, but I don't think it's the Osmo. I forget the name of it anymore. I've seen it, but it's looks very similar to a waterlocks when he puts it on, but he's getting a nice result with that.
Yeah.
I'll have to look at that up and see what that is.
That'd be good to find out.
I've got a quick question. Between coats, do you use steel wool on both finishes or on none of them? How does that work?
I've gotten away from steel wool. It's just so much trouble getting the little bits of wool out a lot of times, especially if you have a
I'd use Scotch-Brite if I needed to do anything. I'd use Scotch-Brite exactly for Ron's reason. I don't like the little bits of steel.
Yeah, I use Scotch-Brite some, but I generally use a 600 sandpaper and just wipe it down very lightly with the sandpaper.
You let it set overnight though before that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, one of the reasons I transitioned over to the Osmo is that I don't steel wool between the Osmo coats. And that takes one component out of the process.
Yep.
It speeds it up.
You don't have to with Osmo.
You know, I don't feel the need, or I don't see the value. And I've done both. I've done it, but there's little, if any, I find little, in my limited experience, I find a little limited value in it. So
I go in with a shop towel and just scrub it with a shop towel just as before this, between coats, just in case there's any loose crap there.
It's rare that I need to do anything between the coats.
Yeah.
So my question is, somebody that has experience with the coloration, this large piece came out great and looks nice, but with the coloration, it's the wood density that absorbs at different rates, the ebb and flow of the grain direction. Does the gray absorb differently than what that's a more aged, it's transitioned over to farther in the decay of spalting. With the coloration, would using color or the dyes absorb at a different rate? Those with experience, could somebody share with me that? I don't want to take up time, I'm over 11 here, but literally, does anybody have a 1 minute answer? The answer is probably yes, but.
Yeah, the answer is yes. The spalting, depending on the degree of the spalt and the breakdown of the wood, it really increases or basically increases the absorption of the dye. So you end up with a different shade of color in that particular area, which enhances the whole piece because it makes different areas of contrast.
Right.
Well, a thing I've been experimenting with, not successfully yet, is putting the dye in the Osmo. A little Osmo in a little cup, put a couple drops of dye in it and apply that and see how that goes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's but I have not got a good result yet. I'm not doing it, beginning experiments.
All right, I'm going to try that on something small. I'm not doing that on a 22 incher. That's just, I'm experimental, but I'm going to be chicken on that one.
Yeah.
That's alcohol and oil. Do you want to do alcohol and oil?
Well, there's the one-liner, right?
Seems to mix. Give it a try.
Yeah.
And let's report back next week. We'll see you all again.
Jonathan, the other thing is to spray water on that. You'll get a good impression of what's going to soak in and what's not going to. That'll give you a look before you put your dye on.
That's fair. That's a great idea.
That's a great point. All right. Thank you all. Very interesting hour. And thank you very much, Jonathan, for that comparison. That was really great. See you all next week.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Wood shop. Thank got for wood.